So this video will be a quick review of a few different types of paper, mainly cheaper fountain pen friendly paper, as well as some cheaper pens that I've picked up, so you can see the difference if you're just getting into fountain pens, or dip pens, I suppose. None of this is really nice or expensive stuff, so it's just for people who are looking into getting into this. So I'll put timestamps on everything. I'm going to go through what inks I have really quick, then the pens, then the paper, and then I'll show how they work on each paper, each type of notebook here. So first we have the Higgins Fountain Pen India ink. It's supposed to be a non-waterproof, slightly darker pigmented ink that's still safe for fountain pens. Picked it up at Michael's for half price. It was a fairly cheap bottle of ink that I used to on the dip pen and to fill one of my refillable fountain pens. This is the Higgins, the Speedball Super Black India ink. It's a pigmented, just a dip ink. It's not meant for fountain pens. And this little bottle here was the ink that came with a kit that I'll show in a minute here. No idea what it is or if you can even buy it individually, but it came with this feather pen set that I'll show you in a second here, and I'll provide links for all this stuff in the description. But this here was the Amazon set that I got. It was 11 bucks in Canada, so came with these different calligraphy nibs. I didn't find these ones particularly nice. I think they're stiffer than they should be. They don't really open up. I haven't really used these much. It's not really the style I was going for. These are quite wide. Sorry, all of those. The feather pen is nice, but I do find it a little uncomfortable after a while, just the way I like to hold it. It kind of digs into my finger right where the feather starts, but the tip of it for me is fine to hold. This, I don't know much better, but I thought it was fine. There's a letter opener, some sealing wax, the ink, and a stand, and also a seal for the wax. And then there's the two nibs that I use. So there's this one here, which is a fine nib, but it's got a bit of a ball to it. And the other one I use is on the end here, and it's an extra fine nib, but doesn't have much of a ball. It's a pretty fine tip there. The next is this gel pen from an Amazon set that I got. It was really cheap. 6 notebooks and 4 gel pens. Said it was fountain pen, gel pen friendly. It's got quite a fine tip on it, and I kind of like it. It's a very wet pen. I wouldn't buy it intentionally, but it wasn't bad. You know, coming with the set of notebooks. Next are these two pens. It came out of a set my wife had when she was a kid. Just really cheap, you know, kind of a kid's set. So the red one has a very fine, not very fine, it's called a fine metallic nib, whereas the black one is quite wide. If you look there, it's fairly wide nib. They lay down a lot of ink. I used them on here as comparison mainly so you could see if the paper could handle it. They just have the ink cartridges that they came with 15 years ago. No idea what brand it was, if it was anything good or not, but just a cartridge, black ink. Next we have the Wing Sung 3008 refillable pen. It came, I think it was $20 for a 4-pack. I got the extra fine nib. So you pull the stopper back and you can thread this plunger in and out and just suck ink up from a bottle. So I filled this with the Higgins Feather Pen India ink. That's what's in here. Then Muiji, I'll provide a link again for these. They sell 2 fountain pens currently. One is a polycarbonate. It's got your average fine nib, says either 3 or 0.3 on there. It's got a click type cap on it, and takes a cartridge that looks like that, had a little ball in it to shake up the ink. The aluminum one is quite a fine nib. I really like it. I like writing small and fine. It's scratchier, of course, but it's got a very fine tip on it. It's aluminum, thinner than any of these other pens that I have here. The cartridge that came with it was quite small. It's also a snap-on lid. The nice thing about this is that the cap fits in the back of the pen. There's a little ring there, and the lid just snaps in there pretty nice if you're not using your left hand. I can't get it in there now with one hand, but there we go. And yeah, I do like how this pen feels. Last one is the Zebra disposable fountain pen. They got a whole bunch of different colors. And this one's a teal. They were $3 or something at Staples. Fairly reasonably fine nib, or average. Fair bit of ink in it, but just a disposable pen. Next is the paper. This is just about the cheapest you can get in Canada anyway. The notebooks every school kid uses, you get them at Walmart, you get them anywhere. Really cheap garbage paper, really. This one is a notebook I picked up at a secondhand store, but it looks like, and it's got no labeling. I have no idea what it is, but it looks like just something you get at Walmart, something cheap, a dollar store. Next is, in quality, I suppose, probably the 6-pack that I got on Amazon. So it came with 6 notebooks and 4 of these gel pens, and said it was, yeah, fountain pen ready. Then I got a few different notebooks from Muiji. So there's this size here. They come as a 5-pack for a couple bucks. Quite cheap. B5 size. I got one individual one. This one notebook in the A5 is the cost of half the cost of these 5, I think, that are bigger. Then this was, right, I should open them up a second. This was fountain pen paper. Sorry to go back. Not many pages, 30 pages in them, but they do fold nice and flat open. And that's what's really nice about these. Even though they're small, you can flatten them right down anywhere, and they're nice to write on for that reason. Same with this one. It's got more pages in it, but same thing where if you really flatten it out, it just flattens right out. Then the next option from Muiji was also in the A5 size, these 20-hole coil rings. So they pop open really easy, and you get refills. So this is a pack of lined paper for a couple bucks. You can get graph paper pretty cheap, plain paper, 30 sheets, as well as really fine graph paper. And these pop open pretty easy. You just replace the paper. It's a clear cover. Also supposed to be fountain pen friendly ink. And the last one, I got this off Amazon. It's a Midori notebook. I think it was 15 bucks for this off Amazon. And folds open flat. It's got a bookmark there. Lays quite flat, and it's very nice paper. So then, how they wrote. This is the cheap notebook here. So in all of them, it'll be the same order that I wrote with this. So the dip pens with the different inks and the different nibs. So the 3 inks with 2 different nibs, then the gel pen, then those calligraphy pens, and then the refillable one, then the 2 from Muiji, and then the teal zebra pen. So in this, with everything, let's see how close I can get. The lines really spread, makes quite thick lines, and the ink really flows out on the paper. This isn't really picking up. It's interesting. So you can see if you look close, the ink kind of flying out from where I was actually writing, both on it's easiest to see on these large letters from the calligraphy pen, but you can also see it, I don't know how close I can get, it doesn't really focus that close. You can see it here on the and the H, where there's streaks and drops of ink, or on the teal you can see it as well. It really flies around. Does it with the dip pens as well. So it's almost like static, it's making your ink fly everywhere. That's not exactly what it is, but your ink flies everywhere, and your lines end up being quite thick. It really soaks into the paper and spreads. Then on the back side, just about every ink bled through, especially on the printing, but just about every ink bled through there. But you flip one page, you don't really see it anymore. Obviously, you would think, but on some of the other papers you do. And this is also by far the scratchiest paper to write on. It's really rough. You really hear it. You really feel it. It's not incredibly pleasant to write on. If we flip to this notebook here, it's a fair bit better. There's less of the ink kind of flying everywhere. It holds ink a lot closer to the line that you're drawing. You don't get those streaks of ink flying everywhere as much. It's still, you know, a little bit here and there. So this is significantly better than the cheapest paper, but it still creates a thicker line than the nicer papers. It's a lot better. I actually don't mind writing on this. It didn't go as badly as I thought it would. Same order of the pens that I wrote with here. If you flip to the other side, it's the thick calligraphy pens that bled through, as well as the gel pen bled through. And again, flip over the next page, you don't see it anymore. But you wouldn't really want to be writing on both sides because of all the bleed through here. Although, like I said, it's only the thick calligraphy pen and the gel pen that actually bled through. The others aren't so bad. Like if you look at where I wrote with the dip pens and the fountain pens down below. And this paper is a little smoother to write on, but not a lot different. And this is that 6-pack of fountain pen friendly paper off Amazon, the cheap 6-pack with the gel pens. So the main thing with this, the main thing with this notebook is the line spacing. It's huge. It feels like a waste. So if you write big, you might prefer it, but it's quite a bit larger than standard lines, and I don't like writing in it for that reason. The lines are just huge. If you're looking, that might be what you're looking for, but for me, it's just not for me. The paper itself, it's a little smoother. If I get closer here, it did a good job of holding the ink and not having too much ink flying around, but it's not, for how much extra you paid, I think, than what I assume that black one was, just a dollar store, Walmart notebook. I don't think this is really much better. So you flip the page, and the only one that actually bled through, ironically, is the gel pen that they provided with these notebooks. That's this line here. It bled through along the whole thing. The calligraphy pens, just a little bit here and there, mainly just that spot bled through. But the show through is pretty significant, which is, you know, nice if you're drawing, but when you're just writing, taking notes, you don't want that much show through. Like, you really see that if you go to write on the other side of this page. And unlike the cheaper notebooks, this isn't as noticeable on the camera, but in person you can really, even through a second page, see through that. And it takes 3 pages to block that out. So overall, I wasn't really impressed with this paper, because it claims to be fountain pen friendly, and you know, it wasn't bad for the fountain pens. Like it holds the ink fairly well to where you put it. It's not expensive. Yeah, the lines are huge. It's got the metal coils, and it does really show through, and the pens they provided with it bleed right through. And next is the Muiji with their refillable paper. So this paper was smoother. I found it nice to write on. I prefer the plastic rings in the middle. You still got rings in the middle, but at least they're fatter plastic, not as uncomfortable on the hand. This paper as well you know, you don't have ink kind of shooting out everywhere. But it holds the ink as well, I would say, as the last one there, the cheap Amazon one. Maybe slightly better, but the paper does feel smoother and nicer to write on. And if we flip it over, so the gel pen bled through, but only in spots. Like it bled through a little bit at the beginning, a little bit at the end where I was printing. So not as bad as the paper that the gel pens came through, but you can see again a lot of show through on this. And but at least with this one, the second page, you don't really see it anymore. But quite a bit of show through. You know, the line spacing is average, normal on this, and I'll just pause it a second to show you how these open. I can't do it with one hand, but you just pull them, spread them apart, and they pop open and close back up. Pretty easy. And again, it's cheap, and most fountain pens, well, the ones that I have anyway, don't bleed through. It's just that gel pen, and it is nicer to write on. And this is the A5 Muiji paper here. And I think these were both a little nicer than the refills for the paper. Holds the ink fairly tight. And it's nice to write on. This notebook doesn't fold quite as nicely flat as the larger one that I'll do next, but it still folds flat quite nice. And I find this quite a bit nicer to write on than a coil bound notebook. So there's this side and the pens. And this side. The show through on the phone screen here doesn't look much better than the last two, but in person I find the show through on this to be less bad than the previous two. And it did bleed through just a little bit from the gel pen where I printed. The writing was fine. And then the second page covers it. But it's not bad to write on the back of this, and not as bad, I don't find. And for the last one, this is the Midori. It's my favorite one. I made the mistake of writing on the first page. This opens quite flat, except for the first page. It's got that little fold over there, but everything else stays open. Pretty nice, no matter where you are. I wrote on the first page, that's why it's a little messier. It's harder to write on the first page, but this one by far held the tightest, neatest lines. The ink doesn't go anywhere other than where you put it. And my favorite part about it is it's super smooth. I've never had premium paper before. I don't know. I'm sure there's better, smoother paper out there, but this is really, you know, it's unlike writing on any other paper that I've had before. It's super smooth and really enjoyable to write on. And got it off Amazon for 15 bucks. Nothing bled through. The show through is fairly significant. It's a line through the middle of each page, but this one as well. Second page, you can still see through it. It takes 3 pages before you don't see it. I've been writing on both sides and it's not that bad. But compared to the others, there is a lot more show through, but no bleed through at all, and it's very, very smooth, and by far the most enjoyable one to write on. However, it is $15 for this one notebook, and it's not exactly a durable cover. This is just a paper cover with a light piece of plastic over the top. It would not stand up to being thrown in a knapsack or backpack, or being tossed anywhere for that matter. So this is $15, and this whole pack here of 5 notebooks from Midori was like $6 or something. Let's get the prices there. Canada, $4. So it is the nicest paper. I bought it, and I'm definitely using it. I think in the future I would probably go to these, just because I don't, and these are all cheap pens. I typically have cheaper stuff. The smoothness is very much more noticeable on this. It's really nice to write on. But you know, this is good enough for me. I'm going to enjoy this notebook while I have it. It's very nice to write on. So yeah, that's the review for the notebooks, for the paper. As far as the pens and the ink goes, I do actually like these gel pens. They lay down a lot of ink. They're really smooth. Again, I wouldn't buy them myself. They just came with it. But they do really bleed through just about everything except for this Midori notebook. The Zebra fountain pen, it's okay. I like the colors, and it's just cheap. You can try a whole bunch of different colors. And it feels okay while you're writing with it. It doesn't dry out too quick, anything like that. It's a little bigger point or bigger nibs than I like, but it's not uncomfortable. It's not uncomfortable to hold. This is tapered a little bit right here. It's not too bad. Nothing fancy. For trying out different colors, I think it's nice. Lays down the ink fairly well. Then this has been my favorite as far as laying the ink down, because it's the finest nib that I have. Makes the smallest line, but the aluminum, after a lot of writing, gets uncomfortable, because where I would like to hold it is here, and this is a bit of a sharp or rough edge, and this is textured, so yeah, it's not going to slip or slide. But after an hour of writing or something, it does get a bit uncomfortable. This one, the other Muiji pen, works pretty well, but again, a bit of a thicker writing line, as you would have noticed. So my young son is using it. It's his pen. It was a cheap $3 or $4 pen, something like that. So reasonably nice, but writes a little thicker than I like. This one I like the refillable part. It's got a decent screw cap, screws on nice and tight, or seals well is what I mean, better than some of the snap lids. This snaps down so that you don't accidentally spin it. It was easy to fill. It hasn't leaked anywhere. It's written consistently. If I set it down for a minute or something to think about what I'm going to write about next and don't put the cap on, you got to tap it a few times before it'll start. But it's been good, and I did put the Higgins fountain pen India ink in it. Seems to work reasonably well. So this is the main pen that I use. It writes slightly thicker than I'd like, but it's more comfortable to hold than this aluminum one. These two weren't meant for writing, like just note-taking and stuff. They're calligraphy pens. They're uncomfortable to hold. They're cheap. But, they are what they are. It's just what we started with and something we had to compare, and I mainly just used them to see if the ink would bleed through the paper. This I enjoyed writing with. I wrote quite a few pages with this dip pen, but yeah, for a longer period of writing, this was more comfortable to hold. Then as far as the two nibs that I use from this set, the one has a really fine point that I can't seem to focus on here, and the other one it was fairly fine but had a bit of a rounded tip, and this is the rounded one, and it writes a little bigger but much smoother, and this one is pretty scratchy but finer, and I kind of switched between both because I like smooth writing, but I also like fine writing. It's the same thing with this Muiji aluminum pen. It's pretty scratchy, but it writes fine, so I like that. And this one is quite smooth, and it writes a little bigger, but the smoothness makes up for it in my mind. As far as the ink goes, I think I actually like this feather pen ink, whatever it is, the most out of these here. The Higgins fountain pen India ink is a little bit grayer, but with a dip pen, it flowed nicer, stayed on the pen longer. You could write longer with it. The Speedball Super Black India ink dries out pretty quick. Like, you gotta know what you're gonna be writing about, and if you gotta pause to think about it, you kind of gotta go clean your pen or dip it again and have more build up later or something. I think this feather pen ink that came with that set was the nicest out of them for the dip pen. The Speedball Super Black was darker, but I found the feather pen ink just wrote a bit nicer, didn't dry out as fast. I took these outside once, and if you're writing outside and it's a bit sunny, that Speedball dries out just way too fast. And as far as the differences went, in a nice notebook, you don't see much difference between them. It's when you get the cheaper paper that you really see the difference. So my overall reviews for dip pen ink, if you can find this feather pen ink, it works well as anything I need. And then it's kind of a trade-off. The Higgins is a bit grayer, but doesn't dry out as fast. I prefer that. I'm right-handed. The Super Black is darker, but it does dry out quicker, and I did find that annoying, and it's harder to clean off the nib. You got to scrub it more, and then so that kit, the Amazon kit, I thought was worth it. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I wrote a fair bit with it. The ink that came with it is nice. It's got 2 useful nibs for writing, and even writing with the feather, it wasn't bad. I wrote a fair bit with it. Just to show you what I mean, that was in this cheap notebook. They're like 50 cents a piece or something when you get them on sale, so I didn't really care. I had some writing to do, so I did all this with that dip pen in an afternoon, and you know, my hand didn't get too sore. It worked well enough, and it was fun. I think that's the end of it. These aren't meant for writing. This is the one I use the most, although I do wish it was a bit finer. This is the extra fine, but it's smooth. Not too scratchy. This is fine. I really like how fine it is. And the ink it came with is dark and nice, but it's a little scratchier. As far as the notebooks go, this is my favorite. It's the nicest one. But it is $15, and I think once all these were done, I would go with this style of notebook over the coils, just because it's a lot easier, a lot nicer to write in than having to have your hand over those coils all the time. And these being so cheap and nice, I would probably use them. Like, the pens are right nice on them. Holds the ink well. It's not quite as smooth, but that is kind of a luxury, I suppose, where you're paying $15 versus $4 for more. And these are, you know, I'm less concerned if they get messed up or wrecked while I'm using one. You know, if the corners get bent or crumpled. I would not buy these Amazon ones again, just because they have the most bleed through of the fountain pen ink or fountain pen paper that I bought, and the lines are just huge. It's not nice to write on. This is nice, but when it comes down to it, like, the paper is good, but if I have the choice between you know, trying to write here over top of a coil all the time, think you can flip it over. It holds down nice, but you still got your hand on this coil. So if you write on the backs of paper, to me, I prefer this, just because it's so much easier to write on. So I might do another review later where I find some way to hold this foam and show you how they write, but this was supposed to be a quick review of these cheaper fountain pen and paper products.